Well, hello everybody and welcome to yet another sizzling edition of the Inworld Review. It is, I believe, the 10th of August of the year 2014. See, I can get it right when I try. We're coming to you live on Metaworld 2. It's noon on Sunday. If you're watching in this in replay, then it's a different time, but that's only to be expected, isn't it? We're coming to you live from Chilbo in Second Life, and we're brought to you in association with UTV. Now, today is actually going to be very interesting. I predicted we'd be principally having an open sim type conversation for the greater part of today. Unfortunately, one of my co-hosts, Tara Yates, is actually away today, but I am joined, as ever, by my other co-host, Maria Korolev. Hi, Maria.
Hi, Mal. Thanks for having me.
As always, thank you. And I'm also joined by Petlove Petshop, who's our wonderful camera person on this. So, hi, Pet. And Pet is muted because she's filming, so fair enough.
So sorry.
Right.
Hello. Sorry.
Very good. We're also joined by an old friend of the channel. She's the woman behind Virtual London, of course, but is also familiar with all sorts of other grids and also some forthcoming grids, which we probably won't talk about. And that's Debs Regent. Hi, Debs.
Hi, Mal. Nice to be here.
Good to have you here. Now, by a sheer coincidence, with Tara absent today, I thought, what are we going to cover today apart from the main news? But we were lucky enough to find two people from the open sim hosting company, Zetamex, who were here at the audience to come and join us. And first of all, we have Timothy Viper, who's actually the CEO of Zetamex. Welcome, Timothy.
Hi, yeah. My name is actually Timothy Rogers in real life. You've probably seen me on Marius articles, but hello, thank you for having me.
Okay, I'll try and stick to Timothy then. I won't get in a pickle. Right, and we're also joined by her avatar name is Vinu Mus, I believe, but her real name is Chris, and she is a developer with Zetamex as well. So welcome, Chris.
Hello, thank you for having me on this.
Right, it's going to be much easier for me to refer to you as Chris than try and pronounce Vinu. Is it Venomous? It's
venomous.
Venomous. Oh, as in venom and the vipers and all. Okay, there's a theme. Yeah. I see a theme here. You're going to sting me if I get out of place. Okay, fair enough. Right. So as you can see, we've got a grand collection here. I'm just going to quickly go to my own Twitter feed, as it were, and just give you a brief summary of things that have popped up, and then we'll move to Maria for sort of her headline news, and then we're sort of going to open up the discussion about all sorts of things, no doubt. Hear this sniggering in the background here, and I'll just move my Skype window so it's not pinging all the while. Now, this was interesting. This may actually come up a bit later in the program, but the first link I'm actually going to paste here, which will go into the channel chat, is a link from somebody called Ayumi Cassini. Her blog is called Ayumi Cassini Does Second Life, and this link is a first look at High Fidelity. Now, High Fidelity, for those of you who don't know, and I can't believe any of our viewers don't by now, is the new platform system, really, that Philip Rose does. It's in very early alpha at the moment, and at the moment I'm not on the alpha thing, and neither is the person who wrote this. But what she actually did is she went to GitHub, which is the code repository where people keep their codes, and she downloaded the high fidelity code and compiled it, and ran an installation for herself offline, since she's not part of the alpha testing route, she obviously can connect to the online world, but she was able to have a fairly good look at the basics. Looking at the pictures that go with the blog, those basics have actually been considerably improved, I think, in the online version at the moment. But it's interesting because she's taken a different approach. She can't get into the alpha, so she's downloaded the code and compiled it, which I suppose is a very logical thing to do if you're that interested, and she seems to be very keen on it. Right. I will, of course, be leaving the browser's freezing again. Don't you just love it? A lot of links to high fidelity. We often think of the 3D web and virtual worlds as the future place where you can go and visit your doctor, for example, and get consultations and maybe have devices that health monitoring devices that can connect at the same time, so you don't actually have to go to your doctor's surgery. Also, we've heard a lot about 3D environments used usually to train surgeons rather than the few instances where they've done remote operations virtually. But the Guardian newspaper this week had a post. Again, I'm going to try and copy the link and send it across. And there we go. Yep. The title of this piece is "Comfortably Numb." Thank you, Pink Floyd. How virtual reality can soothe nervous patients. And I had a very similar link to this not so long ago to do with dentistry. But the idea was they would immerse patients in a virtual environment as a way of relaxing them, while the operation's happening. So, if somebody's very nervous about, be it dentistry or getting into an operation or something, they would actually be immersed in a virtual environment. Probably is an alternative to knocking them out, and they would therefore relax, and the operations would proceed with them in the virtual environment, not feeling a thing, presumably, or presumably not. Anyway, interesting stuff there from the Guardian. What else do I have here? I have a sheep in virtual wolf's clothing. This is actually at Mona Eberhardt's blog. Oops, wrong place for copying it. Hang on, that's not. Let's just, sorry, double check it. Oh, great, sorry, it hasn't pasted, so I'm going to have to do that again. A sheep in virtual wolf's clothing is the title of this blog. This actually, there's the link. This is actually going into something we discussed last week, which was the Business Insider's article on how Second Life has devolved into a post-apocalyptic virtual world, and the weirdest thing is many people still use it. This was something that was written by a journalist who had been in about 10 years ago and just come in again to write an article, but obviously hadn't given themselves time to quite literally immerse themselves and really know what they were talking about. So Mona actually continues with some comments on that. The article's been received in a rather odd sort of way. A lot of people are saying, oh, somebody who doesn't investigate, they've just come in quickly. And, they're all critical. Other people have said, well, actually, on second thoughts, it does demonstrate that people who do come in quickly have a number of obstacles still to face. That whatever Linden Lab and those try to do to expedite the simplicity, they're not altogether succeeding. So that's that one. Now, a magazine called Female First. I will warn you in advance that when you open this link, there's a video that also plays in the background, and it is extremely annoying. However, this article is really about fashion industry. We all know that virtual fashion is a big thing, and we also know that many real-world fashion items are actually devised and templated in virtual worlds as a way of prototyping. This article is simply called "Avatars Give Supermodels a Run for Their Money on the Catwalk," which is kind of nice. It's not quite that straightforward, of course, but it discusses the way models may soon be replaced by avatars. And instead of seeing catwalk models in the flesh, you'll be seeing avatars demonstrating costumes. So yes, another interesting facet of virtual life, I suppose.
Sounds like a fight to me. They're not going to like that.
Right. So I do have other links, of course, and plenty of them actually lead to a place called Hypergrid Business, don't they? Interestingly, I had a few to point out, and the only one I've actually got open as an initial link actually is a feature from earlier in the week. It was just after last week's program saying, so how good are the $3 regions anyway? And of course, this leads perfectly into the two guests that we have today. I would say that I think it was about Tuesday or Wednesday when I went to go and try and get my $3 region, and for the next 3 days it wasn't available. It is now back up. There are actually various offers which we'll hear about later. There's a $3, $5, and I forget what the other one is, $10 probably, variants, but very good value for money by the sound of it. So on that, I think I'll just switch over to you, Maria. And before we go into interesting stuff of the week, so to speak, just a quick rundown, detail, gossip. Let's go through the headlines. Over to you.
Okay, so leaving the $3 regions for last, because probably the big story of the summer for OpenSim. Let me quickly run through everything else. Cyberynth, which is an omnidirectional treadmill, succeeded in its Kickstarter. It raised its $250,000 that it wanted. There's still time left in the Kickstarter if you want to support it. This is kind of like the Virtuix Omni, where you stand in one place and you run, except that instead of special shoes, you can wear your socks and you can sit down in it, which is great because a lot of games have you sitting down in things. Like if you're in Grand Theft Auto, you sometimes drive a car. If you're in a space game, maybe sometimes you sit down to pilot the spacecraft. So this is a pretty cool thing. It's expensive. It's like $700. So I don't expect people to be buying this until maybe the price drops further, or maybe like if they're really enthusiastic. But this would be a great kind of thing to have in an arcade. And I very much would love to go to an arcade to try this out. Speaking of arcades, this isn't quite an arcade, but there's a kiosk in Warwick Mall here in Rhode Island, just about an hour drive from where I am, that's raising money for their Oculus Rift Kickstarter project, and there they were showing people the Oculus Rift. So I rode a roller coaster for the first time. I've tried out the Oculus Rift before, but in other games, and I hate roller coasters. And I had to take it off halfway through because I was screaming, and it was really scary. So I'm not a crazy person. I know it wasn't real, and I was sitting on a chair in the mall, but it triggered all those subconscious fear instincts that I have around roller coasters. So if you want to soothe me during surgery, you do not put me in a roller coaster.
Yeah.
That would be bad.
Yeah, I have a great
that would be very bad.
I have a fear of heights, so you would never get me on one of those things.
Yep, but one of the people trying it out was a disabled congressman. He was in a wheelchair, and he really liked it. So that was pretty cool to see him experience that. He didn't scream though, because he's a normal person and just likes roller coasters, the normal amount. But that was kind of cool. So if you want to support the Rhode Island virtual world development software industry, then you can give them a few bucks. Rhode Island is famous for blowing $100 million on one of those MMORPGs a couple of years ago. A baseball player named Schilling pitched this idea for a World of Warcraft type of MMO, and they totally blew it. And the state lost like $112 million altogether after all the fees and late fines were added up. So it's very embarrassing. And Rhode Island has something like the second worst job situation in the country after only Mississippi. So they're really desperate to get in on this cutting edge of technology development and create some local jobs so that people don't have to drive to Connecticut or Massachusetts for work. But on the other hand, Rhode Island is so tiny that a commute to Rhode Island from Rhode Island to Massachusetts or Connecticut is only a few minutes. So, maybe it's not so bad. Okay, so I had an article from the folks at Arch Virtual from John Bouchard, who built a virtual simulation of a Navy vessel, and his uncle, who had served on that vessel, got a chance to try it out. So that was a really cool column. I like that. Virtual World is moving from OpenSim to Unity.
I'll just mention, actually, while you were still on that, on the compilation tomorrow for First Week in Review, we've got that really heartwarming sort of clip with his grandfather.
Yeah.
But we also have quite a few other clips that he's posted showing different demonstrations of virtual buildings and things. So
Arch Virtual is doing some really great stuff with Oculus Rift. Most of the stuff is Unity development. We've also done stuff up in Sim. And I really love what they're doing. They're one of the leading firms in this space. They're not just doing architecture. They're doing all sorts of other stuff now these days, too. Let's see. Other stuff. So I mentioned Virtual World City is moving to Unity. Virtual World City is the open sim startup run by Frank Corsi. He's a guy who's best known for some failed banks in Second Life. He's also known for several failed grids in OpenSim. And in particular, this particular grid wants to be a Twinity kind of thing, where you pay a huge amount for a virtual city that has the same name as a real city. And so the price is there from like $50,000 to $250,000. And I don't and the business model didn't work for Twinity. I went into Twinity to check it out to see how it was going. And there were only like a handful of people online in there at the time, so it's kind of really deserted.
It just doesn't. It hasn't changed really at all either, has it?
It hasn't changed. The business model makes sense when you explain it to somebody like at first hand. Oh, it's like we're putting real cities but making virtual models of it. But in practice, who really needs that? It's like having a virtual New York website. Or like City Pages, I think, try to do that. Well, it's an advertising venue for local businesses to try to promote their companies. But since nobody ever goes to those pages, it's not very promotional, So for example, if you want to promote your real world company in a virtual world, why would you go to Twinity and pay a huge amount for it when you go to, say, Second Life and pay a much smaller amount?
You have the customers.
You're not going to get a lot of people.
I'm sure there's something Debs can tell us about, because you really have to go where the customers are. It's there would be no point in putting up a virtual London at full scale somewhere with 2 people or the only people that ever log in. There's no bottom line.
Twinity didn't even pretend to do full scale. They're signal regions. They're not even regions. They're scenes, because this is a scene-based world, not a region-based world. These are tiny little scenes, several rooms.
Wasn't it?
Yeah. That's what I mean. Room-based, same thing. So it's very little claustrophobic, little small, cramped rooms. I did not enjoy going in there. I guess most people don't, and there's not really reason for it to exist. So Virtual World City has that as a marketing problem. Not only do they have the same problems that Twinity faces, plus in addition they have the problem that Twinity got a lot of publicity because they were the first doing it. Virtual World City is going to do even worse by comparison. So while the move to Unity makes a lot of sense, they're going after general public. So a Unity-based, browser-based system or tablet or whatever system makes a lot more sense. People are just looking and shopping. They're not building stuff. So
I kind of wonder.
Overkill.
I kind of wonder if the current VR tech, things like Oculus take off, whether there will be a market for this. But I mean, again, you're talking about the costing, and you're not talking about a continuous world. I mean, virtual tourism. Sorry, Debs. Yeah.
The only reason I want to interrupt is because you've got the one person who knows all about this here on the show now. I started London in 2006. And when you talk about real life virtual cities and bringing them to virtual worlds, why are there so many Londons on different grids? Because London appeared to be a success. So everybody else has copied. That's why Mirko did Twinity. I've had a conversation with Mirko. I've had a conversation with people. That near Global as well. Why did they choose London? Because London was a success in Second Life. But I tell you, it's one thing getting the community, and we can get the virtual shops. And we've had quite a few real customers, like the Daily Mail, the Daily Telegraph, as Mal knows. A company called Songpod who did pods. And there's an estate agent but I can't remember the name of it now, a large American estate agent anyway. But it's not easy to transfer the advertising and the branding into a virtual world. I mean, we've all looked at the Mercedes sim on Second Life. The problem is, people have put these sims up and they think, wow, I've got a sim there, or I've got a game or whatever they're putting up. And everybody will come. No, they don't come. You have to market, you have to brand, you have to do an awful lot of hard work. And, just having it there and leaving it there doesn't work. And I know Maria doesn't think that having virtual cities works, as real duplicates of real life places. But, I mean, we're always busy. We're always busy. And we don't bot, we have genuine traffic in London. So, it does work, but it works as a community.
Yeah, I was just saying it's building up the community and making that viral that counts. The reason what I was about to mention was actually something totally different, like the wee woe thing that I sometimes mention. It's on the iPad. I mean, I think virtual tourism, or rather, I should say, tourism using virtual environments probably has a future. And when we were talking about Unity, which it's not virtual world, it's immersive spaces are created in Unity. They have a beginning and an end. They're not endlessly built. But I can see that if things like Oculus find their place, not necessarily in the home, but in booths or arcades or whatever, you might see somebody like the English Tourist Board, for example, thinking, oh well, we can give virtual representing things that are available in Britain, so would-be tourists can sort of have half the experience before they come, before they book their holiday. And I think on that level, in the future, we may see stuff working. But that is very much it's a different exercise from your thing, which is community.
Actually, we've talked to them.
Yeah,
we've talked to them. We've talked to them. We've talked to Royal Parks. We've talked to quite a lot of. We've talked to Parliament. We've talked to Boris's office. They're not interested. They're not interested in virtual worlds at all. They don't see the benefit. They don't see the value. And to be honest, I at this stage, I don't see I blame them, because there's no case studies. There's no proven case studies that's proven that it actually works. And everybody in business wants a case study, because they're not going to risk being first. And that's kind of how it is.
And we need a much larger user base in order to get that into place, which I believe will. I think it's inevitable. Inevitable, but I think we're also going to see the same thing we're seeing on the web. So if I'm a company and I want to have a web presence, at the beginning, I was just looking for any way to get onto the web, and so you had various directories of companies, but over time, it evolved into companies either had their full websites and promoted their websites, not just like, if we put it up, they'll come, or they reached out to marketing to existing communities, like say a company might have a place on Facebook, or they would reach out to media companies like Time Out New York and similar sort of publications that would bring people together around a particular location. And I think that's kind of what you guys are doing. You're having a community. You're inside a very well-traveled, well-used platform. And plus, you're focusing in on a very specific London community, as opposed to putting up a generic Me Too platform that's like supposed to be for every city everywhere. And so when and so I'm specifically addressing the generic platform for every city everywhere. That has a lot. That's why I'm saying it has a lot of strikes against it, because you're competing against the successful communities like Second Life and Facebook, and you're competing against previous established players like Twinity, who have been able to make it work. So so that's why I'm saying that the business model seems iffy, but the move from OpenSim makes a lot of sense to me. Okay, so
it would be nice to more people
Grid,
using them generally, I think.
Yeah, we'll headset coming online in about a year. We'll see a lot of video games coming out at around that same time. We'll see arcades popping up. First one's already being developed in Boston. We're probably going to see a lot more. People will start playing with it, and a couple of years later, prices will come down. We'll start focusing in on input devices, which right now we don't even have. I mean, do we go with a treadmill? Do we go with the Hydro Razors, the guns, the Kinects, the Leap Motions? Once that's settled out, then I think we'll start seeing massive deployment, and companies are going to start looking at, we have to get a presence in VR. How are we going to get that? What's the most effective way to do it? All right. So leaving the Zetamex for last, some fun news. Tangle Grid Fashion Expo is over, and they have shared a whole bunch of advice with us about how to run an expo. Their visitors were up 55% over the Steam Expo that they held at the end of June. And half of the visitors were over the Hypergrid. So it's definitely a promotional thing for that grid. They're starting small. They had 85 people come to this particular expo, which for a small startup grid that nobody really knew about before is a pretty good deal for them. And they're going to have an Air and Space Expo in a month. So it looks like they're going to be doing, looks like they've got expos lined up throughout the rest of the year. So I'm really looking forward to seeing how they grow this, and they're going to be adding more features and hunts and contests and charities and other stuff to it as they go. I'm pretty excited about it.
We actually took a visit there on Wednesday's Hypergrid Safari. I was actually having problems rezzing. I was getting an empty sort of white plane, and on the adjacent sim, I saw the fairground kind of thing that looked like the real thing. So I popped over there and wandered around. But yeah, it was great fun. If it was the same thing I got onto on the adjacent sim, it was very well built, very detailed and everything. So yeah, great stuff.
And of course, they get better and better at it with every new expo that they do. So I'm really looking forward to seeing how they develop in the future. And our favorite grid,
the yo-yo grid, yes, it's in an upward mode. And what do you mean permanently? Surely they can't continue to be a yo-yo grid if they're going to be permanent. Sorry.
So
flippant.
They're having problems with enabling inbound teleports, so outside people can teleport in. And normally I would say, talk to Tim at Zetamex or talk to Snoopy at Dreamland Metaverse. They'll help you out. But of course, they've been customers of both those vendors and left in a huff. So they're turning to like amateur like me for help, and I'm like, I don't know.
don't ask the provider.
Have you tried disconnecting your router?
That's
try
funny.
Plugging your router in and out.
don't look for the providers. Ask the journalist. I like that one. Oh dear.
Yeah, well. and so and that brings us to Kitely added demos. Well, they had demos in their Kitely market. They just made them easier to use. They're right on the product listing page. You can just try the demo without having to go through your shopping cart first. So it's a nice little system. Instead of on Second Life, the demo items are listed separately from the main item. So here they're all on the same page with all the variations, and you can click on the little try demo button, and it shows up in your avatar, and you can try it out. And if you like it, you're still on that product page, and then you can buy the item. All right. And that is it for all the other...
Sorry. I just had a quick question about that. I haven't had a chance to try it. Does that also work for Hypergrid avatars too? Could they try the demo, or they just have to go to the checkout? Because I know it's a little bit different at their Hypergrid checkout.
Yes, the way the demos work is that it's a standard item. It's delivered just like a standard item, except that the creator modifies it to be the demo item. For example, there's a block attached to it that says demo on it or something like that. And it's up to the creator whether to allow hypergrid exports or not.
Right, but that wasn't what I was trying to ask. What I was trying to ask was when you hit the try demo button, because I was reading that it sends it straight to your avatar, does that also work like, can you try demo straight to a non-Kitely avatar is what I'm asking.
I imagine that will depend, as Mira said, on if it's a plausible product, then it can be delivered and compared to any avatar, anywhere. Whereas if it's not exportable, it's logged.
Well, it's easy enough. I can just, let's see, find an exportable item and try it out. I do that
right now, but I can. Oh, well, if you wanted it right now, sure. I mean, I'm just curious. I haven't had a chance to test it yet. I've been really busy with all these orders coming in.
All right. So let's see. Okay, I need to find one that has a demo available too. Okay.
They don't work in Second Life. Don't work in Second Life, though, do they?
It's such a shame. It really should.
Try demo. Okay.
If we remember Spot on 3D, they tried to do that double Dutch delivery system back then, where it was supposed to deliver to your Second Life avatar and your Spot on 3D avatar, but you had to create the item in both places, and then move items in both places to your item on their marketplace.
Yeah,
which was kind of a hassle.
Very cumbersome. And you had to have multiple logins and all sorts of things. But Kitely really solved that issue with the hypergrid. It just deliver the product over the hypergrid, and I really commend them on that. It's a great feature, hands down. Yeah, yeah, absolutely. It's and they're in there first, as the hypergrid grows.
Well, there was other people who tried to do it and had successful products, but the problem was they just didn't market. They didn't know how to do it. I mean, Maria covered the one that was really good, which was ran by my OpenSim grid. They had a really great hypergrid market system, but the problem is no one marketed it. It just sat there and collected dust.
Yeah. Okay, it delivers to your receiving avatar, so it doesn't give you choice of avatars to deliver to. And you can change the delivered avatar in the when you're actually in an shopping cart, but I'll have to test it out a little bit more to see if it actually works that way. Okay,
I was just curious about.
Yeah, I was very disappointed with the My Open Grid marketplace, and there was an HG marketplace too, by another grid, and neither one of them marketed it. And they both had a system where the grids have to be connected one by one, and so they would individually talk with grid owners to connect them up. And for some reason, they expected grid owners to just come to them and say, "Connect us," and they expected customers to come and say, "Oh, give me stuff," and merchants to just show up. And you really have to market the marketplace to all three of those people. And Kitely did a really nice job reaching out to merchants before they started building their technology. And they have it so that the grids don't have to do anything to participate. If you're on a hypergrid, they can deliver. So they helped avoid the chicken and egg problem there a little bit as a result of doing that. Okay, so Zetamex $3 regions. I guess I can start out with my experience with it as a kind of neutral, more or less neutral party, because I tried them out on Sunday night. This is a $3 region. This is the 15,000 prim region. It now costs $5 as a permanent price for the 15,000 prim region, but I'm getting it for $3 grandfathered in because I bought it during that experimental week. And I have to say that when it comes to buying regions, and I've been critical of Tim's website in the past, but this particular time, it was ridiculously easy to get this region. The process was so simple. It was so fast. It was so easy. I was in my world. It was so easy to do. They've just beaten everybody else hands down. I really commend them for their job doing the interface. When I signed up, you only had a choice of a flat region or 3 of Linda Kelly's ores. And Zetamex, of course, provides free hosting for all of Linda Kelly's material, which is a great public community service that they're doing. And I've posted pictures of that Linda Kelly does a really nice job. Everything was kind of in tune with everything else. Everything was scripted. The scripts all worked. It was just really nice, really pleasant, and really easy. So right now, my editorial opinion is that this is the best deal for OpenSim hosting anywhere out there. And that's it for me.
Great. Well, let's introduce Tim. I mean, because my first question, because I sadly missed the $3 thing, although I can now go and get the $5 one. But
well, you can still get a $3 region. They're just 7,500 prims, which is plenty for most people.
Yeah, actually, I was slightly more concerned as a TV studio about the avatar count, and the $5 one has 20, I believe, which is probably adequate. But these. How, if you wanted to, or indeed whether you can, are these upgradable, Tim, in the sense that if you get one of these and suddenly want to expand and have, say, a 4-sim group, like where you've got a stage and 3 for the audience, or if you want to have one of these new, what are they called again? The variable size regions, that it. Does this allow for that kind of expansion, or is it simply a system of slotting a sim onto the edge of Metropolis or OS Grid?
Well, to answer your question, yes, they are expandable, and we actually expand them in multiple different ways, because we had a lot of customers bring this question to us. Basically, what has been happening is... sorry, my mic stopped there. Basically, what has been happening is a lot of people have come to us, and I thought people would like these little regions, and we offer simulator plans, which you get an independent instance. Because I want to make this clear, because Kitely has been having a bit of a fit about this, about our region plans. But essentially, they are lower performance because the region plans, you're sharing an OpenSim instance with other people. Now, we don't overload them, but if, let's say, another person on your simulator has a big party, you might show some effect to that. It won't be horrible, but you could see effect to that.
How many regions would there be on... when you say sharing servers, I mean, I think there's the Second Life. Each sim is a quarter of a server.
I actually believe that's right. So it's kind of interesting that people are even concerned about that. Most people I know actually run several regions from one sim from their home. But essentially, what's been happening is people have actually been buying clusters. I've tried to talk people into saying, hey, you want a cluster of 9 regions, why don't you just order our simulator plan? But they feel that that's too much work and complication, so they actually just end up going and buying like 9 region plans and have me set them right next to each other.
Right.
Granted, it's cheaper to go the route I suggest, but everyone wants to go this other route instead, which I don't mind. I want to cater to everyone's options. So essentially about the upgrading is you can continue. We can upgrade you to the maximum 750 plan on the region, and if you outgrow that, you can upgrade to our simulator plans. We'll just save your ore and reload it back up on a simulator plan. So you can pretty much scale infinitely. We don't have any limits.
Well, I have to admit, in my case, we've got no sort of financial plan in place to know where I'm starting. But, as at that price, you get 4 regions. And like instead of $3.12, and keep 3 empty as sort of audience areas, and then focus on taking 1 to build a stage. Now that's very specific to me, and it doesn't go beyond that at all. Just so we got somewhere like this studio exists here in Second Life, so we had something similar that could actually cater for an audience even. On OpenSim. So I just thought, well, that will be a starting point. And, I was just in the back of my mind, I was wondering, if we did that and it took off and we had other ideas where it would be easily expandable.
Well, just to add to that, I want to, so yes, it's upgradable, but just to expand on it a little bit, Just like Kite-Leon opens OS Grid and Metropolis, there is no vendor lock-in. Maria can attest to this. You just submit a request for your ore, and you could take it and run with it somewhere else if you decide to shut down. Want to come back when you rethought more planned, and just bring your ore back and start where you left off.
The other thing I have to ask, only while I've got you, so it's a quick yes or no. Are there discount bands for like the prices we've been talking about obviously monthly? Are there annual plans that are discounted or anything like that in place as well?
We offer discounts for simulators and whatnot, but not the region plans. We pay for a whole year up front, but we do allow you to pay for a whole year up front because we have had a couple people just say, throw money at it because I don't want to worry about it all year. For $3, I can just throw you 12 months worth in color good. Exactly. And we're happy to do that, but because they're already so cheap, we don't really want to give a discount because we're kind of subsidizing these right now, but they're already starting to take over and cover costs. But when we started, we subsidized them because, as I tried to say before, my company is not about making money. It's about getting people into OpenSim. I want people to experience OpenSim for themselves. And I says, what better way to do this than we now have the finances to subsidize and get people in here? And so that's what we did.
And I have to say, for for this kind of price, people like me have never taken land in Second Life, have rented it or begged it and all sorts of things. But for prices like this, it enables you to have a kind of home base. And for example, if you pick up stuff in Second Life, on the hypergrid generally, you want somewhere to go back where you can actually res it and try all these things out. Not necessarily have crowds of people in, but just organize your own stuff and have, as it were, there is also a hypergrid enable, of course, so you can just jump out to your, you can put up your own hypergrids to places you want to go to.
Yeah, it's hypergrid enabled because it's connected to grids that are already hypergrid enabled, so you're free to go wherever.
Yeah. So it is I think I would say it's a bargain. Wouldn't you agree, Debs? I heard you say.
I do, yes. I think it sounds really, really good. With it being hypergrid enabled, then you can get in, get out. And I heard you mentioning the OAR files, the OR files before. I'm not sure that everybody knows what an OR file is. It's basically the whole sim, including all the buildings and everything, in one file or one set of files. And you just bring the file in and you've got everything as you want it. And there's also something for inventory as well, isn't there? You can bring something like that in. And they're great.
As they're called, IARs, Inventory Archiver.
Yeah.
But it's the best way to think about it for Second Life users. I would say, builder box scripts where you buy those pre-built houses, you click a button, your house comes all out, already pre-saved in your inventory. It's kind of like that, but for your entire region. Yeah, it's like a for backup of your entire region that you have on your computer. It's you own that stuff for good.
Yeah.
I don't think people need to worry about it at this price. But I should point out there are a few limitations, aren't there, Chris? About the, for example, you can only have one backup that's stored for you, and you can download an AOR. And you've got there are restrictions on your control panel. You can reboot the region, but you don't basically get the full whack for that price, do you? You just get everything you need.
Right. Oh, you can make more than one backup. There's just one online backup slot. So you can get as many ores as you want. So if you're building, and I strongly recommend this for anyone doing a lot of building in OpenSim, to pick a vendor that lets you make ore backups. So if you spend a whole day building, at the end of the day, if you have one of these $3 regions, request the ore backup. And in my case, it took a couple of hours for me to get the email link. I don't know if Tim's going to be speeding this up or not, but it's even in 2 hours. It's perfectly fine by me, because it's a $3 region. I'm perfectly fine with waiting for the link to come to email. And time you make any substantial building on it, get an ore, and that way, if something does happen, you have it. If you want to revert back to a previous version, you have that ore. If you want to move it to another grid, you have it. If you want to sell it to somebody, like if you make WAR files to sell to people, you have the file to sell it. If you want to upload it to Kitely or upload it to somewhere else, you have it. So it doesn't cost any, and it's so easy.
How about, I mean, we often stress this, probably on just about every show, that having OpenSIM installation or even having one on your own computer locally is just the way to go when you're actually creating art or creating buildings or other material, because you know it's all yours and you can then upload it on demand. You can upload it to Second Life, you can upload it to another grid. By creating offline, it's yours to deploy. Obviously, if it's a whole sim, it is an OAR file. How are people fixed if they take one of these bargain? Sorry to barge in there. Bargain regions. If I say I was an artist and I wanted to create a complex sculpture within the prim limits, is it easy in one of these regions to also export the thing I've created? So that it's ready for upload to other grids?
Well, I mean, you could easily or export it out, deliver it over the hypergrid, but as you're saying, running from home. So what I normally encourage people to do, if you're going to work on a big build, I normally always suggest make a local copy and run it from home, just because, Kitely did bring this up in in the comments on Hypergrid Business. I'm not saying OS Grid and Metropolis are bad grids. They are open grids, and at least OS Grid is a dev grid and has been known to have issues in the past. So always running stuff from home is your guaranteed way to make sure your region's always online. Because I offer the region you sit on, but it's sitting in OS Grid. So if OS Grid goes down for maintenance or Metropolis goes down for maintenance, your region's running, but the grid's down. So you're kind of at the coach paddle. So I always suggest make your own backups and run them from home, and you can get into your stuff and work on it even when a grid is down. I mean, downtime happens. Second Life has downtime. Granted, when Second Life has downtime, Twitter's like going crazy.
Yes. I've actually, in my experience with OS Grid, that while, if I'm logging in to the hypergrid, that is my home grid, so I'm always logging in there, and I've very rarely experienced anything being offline. Except individual sims, of course, destinations. And I sort of course, it is the biggest one too, isn't it? Am I right, Maria? OS Grid, as far as all, yeah.
They used to be the biggest grid, but Virtual Worlds Grid ran up a whole bunch of 1,000 region-sized mega regions, and added 18,000 regions in one go to their grid. So by land area, they're now biggest. But this could change if OS Grid starts tracking the number of their variable size regions. They might be over that again. Justin Clark Casey, the OpenSim core developer, added the code on the experimental branch of OpenSim recently that lets you calculate the total land area on your grid, including all the variable regions. You have to run this code on the grid console, but it is there. So hopefully 5 days from now, when I do the grid stats report, OS Grid will have that for me. But right now, no, they're not the biggest grid anymore.
Okay.
They are, I believe, the oldest surviving grid still.
Yes. Well, that's something. I'm a good old timer. I'm on OS Grid.
I thought Third Rock was the oldest.
I talked to the original core developers, and there was a grid called Deep Think that was Deep Grid that was folded into OS Grid, and there was a central grid that's since closed.
I seem to remember Deep.
Goes back a long way, doesn't it?
I remember Deep Think, and I seem to remember problems.
Is Bedrock the guy who did the Flintstone sim in Second Life?
I don't know.
Okay, never
Sorry.
Was that being witty, Peg?
I'm not. I'm serious. Tiger Honey did it. Guy named Tiger Honey. I was just wondering.
Okay.
The one downside to creating at home, and Tim probably won't share my frustrations here because he's a technology guy, but as a non-technology person, I have to say that my home-based OpenSim installation, The hypergrid works about 33% of the time. Sometimes it's software, so you have to install the software, manage the patches for the software, and there's plenty of opportunities for you to mess things up, like AviWorlds has found out with them trying to do their self-hosted grid, which, by the way, reminds me, I just heard from Alex Pompiselli, the owner of AviWorlds. He is, again, looking for a hosting company to host his grid. He is giving up on running it himself. He says that his powerful server in his man cave isn't up to par, and he is open to using the hosting companies that he used before. So, Tim, here's your opportunity.
So
he's
the permanent
I hate saying this, but I'm on the record here, live saying this. He has actually emailed us several times requesting to come back, but he has left and come back so many times and has brought our name down publicly on sites like yours. And so it's just not in our business's best interest to say yes.
It's amazing.
He should go with some unknown hosting company should take him up, because they'll get so much publicity from dealing with them.
Well, Marcus, who runs OpenSim City, was running it, the one that we were talking about earlier. If you remember when he first criticized Zetamex on your blog, he came up and says, "Hey, I'm starting an OpenSim company. You should be our customer." So maybe that should be their first customer.
I remember that. I should connect Alex Pompiselli and Frank Corsi. I think they were meant for each other. I think they might do really well. Or it might explode the universe. Okay. Oh, and the one critique. I mean, I still have critiques of Zetamex. The one thing that I really missed that they used to have was their little mini grids that they had set up, where you would get 4 or 9 regions, and a little variable region or mega region, and it's your own little mini grid, so that if OS Grid is down for testing or upgrades, or Metropolis is down, it doesn't affect your own little mini grid. So to me, that was the best combination of having your own land that you control without having to run it at home. I hope that they bring those back.
By saying yes, I do miss those myself. But the thing was, the reason we got rid of them is that a lot of people were trying to use them to be a whole grid with them, and they are one single instance, and they can't do that. So what we're looking at doing right now is something I've been working on in the back end, secret for everybody here. It's coming out. We're bringing them back, except with a shared back-end service where we have another server set aside for handling all profiles, groups, search, all that stuff. It'll be handled outside, and your mini grid will still be online, and it still runs off of that, but it has a shared back-end ran in the cloud, so you don't have to worry about overloading it. I mean, you're still going to be limited with how many regions you can get because it is a mini grid, but many of the services are offloaded to allow more capacity and more user friendliness and more stability.
Right. Because what Tim
sorry, Chris.
That was better.
Oh, that's just a talker to me of what he just said, because of what I've been doing.
Oh yeah, he's been working on our marketplace that no one's really covered. We did a whole presentation on it. We put it on our blog, and no one has covered anything about it.
Well, I don't. Is it live yet?
It's working, but it's not publicly accessible yet.
Okay, so
there's
that's
still
probably
some bugs to work out.
Yeah. Once you do get it up, then definitely. Once there's a news to announce, like for example, if you're accepting beta merchants into it, for example, I can do a story on that. Or if you're signing up beta grids for grid partners, I can do a story on that. Something that readers can actually do something, with this information. Just so send it my way.
Right.
Yeah. But with the mini grids, I was going to say, like what Tim said earlier, sometimes customers will pick things that are less practical, simply because they're just easier to get their heads around. So maybe it's not even the cheapest option, but it's just so simple that you just do it. Like the $3 regions are just so simple. You don't have to think about it. You don't have to understand the complexity of how grids work. And to somebody who's obviously in it and developing it, all this stuff is really simple. But to people like me, and I've been covering this for 5 years, this is scary, complicated stuff. When you're trying to sell to somebody who's new to OpenSim, coming fresh from the outside, then any makes it friendlier and easier is a major plus.
Well, I agree, and people like, isn't it? Oh, sorry.
No, it's just the main thing. You've hit upon something that's really, really vital to getting basic bums on seats, people using stuff. There's a rule of 3: faster, easier, and cheaper. If you can get a product that's faster, that's easier, and cheaper than all the competition, then it'll catch on. And you've hit there.
Well, and that's kind of what we've done. But like I said, I have to go back to Mario. Mario's been really helpful to me. Granted, sometimes I'm human. I get aggravated when she says, I don't like the way you don't have a buy now button, but you have the price there. But,
I was confused. It actually confused me. I looked at that page and I was like, I can't think about where do I click?
Well, I don't know. The thing I don't like is
I was actually confused.
The thing I don't like is buy now buttons that don't tell you the price. It's like those expensive restaurants you go into where they give you the menu, but it's not considered polite to give you the price.
What restaurants are those? Oh, I've never been to one of those.
No, you do occasionally see them. They're pretty, pretty high price restaurants.
Because I'd be afraid.
Yeah.
I know. I'd be like, okay, I want the chicken. How much is that? And they'd be like, oh, it's $50. For chicken? I'll go to McDonald's.
You have to ask. You can't afford it. I think the answer is.
Well, that's exactly the trick. When they tend to be exclusive sort of places for exclusive customers. Now,
Mario's feedback's important. Oh, sorry. Go ahead. I just want to say that the feedback's important, and I think, I've been taking that, and that's how I'm so happy that she finally said my order process is simple, because I've tried so many times to get her to say it's simple, but every time she's like, no, this is confusing. No one's going to know what estates are. No one's going to know what this is. And she's right. I have to bite my tongue and say, yeah, she's right. So it's good to have feedback.
Yeah. Oh
my God. Did you record this, Mal? Did you get this on the record?
I haven't recorded, but it's going to cost you $4 a month, Maria. Right?
I want to put that on a playback loop.
But me saying that, you're right, I have to bite my tongue.
Nobody hears that enough, it's such a treat.
I have to admit, one of the things that confuses me a lot is changing terminology. Maria knows this from when we had a discussion a few weeks ago about we're not going to call them Sims anymore, they're regions, and then we're talking about regions and then estates. And when you're doing something, you sometimes go off on a bit of a limb, and then it takes somebody else to come in and say, hang on, you're confusing me. But I fall into this trap too. I mean, I use the word buy for regions all the time, and somebody just called me out on it, because why did I use rent once and buy these other times? And it's because I forget. And the other thing is the word simulator, because the word simulator means so many things. Now, it means something specific to the OpenSim community. It's one instance of the OpenSim.exe software running. But to the normal person, a simulator could be a sim, like a little animated character. It could be a region. It could be a simulation. It could be like a million different things. So in calling something a region, at least it's familiar to people from Second Life, but it's also, it's not great. I'm trying to get Kitely to use the word island instead of their worlds thing, because they're not worlds. They're all part of one big world. And of course, I've been battling against standalones
ever since we've had standalones, because the word it has a very technical meaning, but it doesn't have an easy understandable meaning to people.
I think
so that's my personal campaign.
Yeah, I think these, we need common languages, and I think these just evolve over time. I mean, I still plow through my feeds every morning, and the word virtualization will pop up because my search criteria sort of somewhere it gets interpreted. So I'll get a post about virtualization software, which of course has nothing to do with virtual worlds. It's used in a totally different.
Sometimes.
Yeah, it's used in a totally different context, and even my search criteria for virtual worlds is misinterpreted. I will receive blogs from somebody talking about education in the virtual world, and actually they're simply using the expression virtual world to refer to anything that's online. A website. Even if you think you got your terminology right, it can backfire. And I won't even tell you where Second Life goes. Sort of dead person has a second life, or new business has a second life.
I get the same feeds as you, Mel, obviously.
Yeah. And I keep thinking, oh, they're great, they're in Second Life. No, they're not. They're just reborn. So we still haven't got the search engines that can kind of cope with the total semantics of this.
Search engines.
You caught the
Zetamex is working on. Isn't Zetamex working on something with search, which is one of the top things that OpenSim users want to see in OpenSim, according to my recent survey.
Yes, we are. OpenSim.directory. We got one of those new fancy domain names that isn't a .com. OpenSim.directory.
Nice.
Nice. Essentially what it is we're working on it right now. It's not completely finished, but we're working on a system there people can plug in their grid. We know how what's that site called? The MetaVerse, what it's called, the one ran by Diva Kantaro.
Oh yeah.
The one that's by default on grids. I think it's
Diva Kanto, Metaverse Sync.
Yeah.
It's a simple keyword search. Right. It's a keyword search of the Diva distros.
Right, and that is using the built-in search system. I mean, she has an extra module in there that does image pooling, but we're actually developing a search system much like, I don't know if you remember Speculous Grid. They were only around for a little while, but they attempted this and they actually got pretty far. Yeah, and they got really far using their universal search, but no one plugged into it. So what we're working on right now is a search engine. All grids can just copy and paste this into their OpenSim INI, and boom, all the stuff that is put to search in your grid ends up on our search engine. Objects, classifieds, pretty much all that will just feed straight into our search engine. So you can literally search objects, you can search everything grid-wide. The only thing we're having issues with right now is trying to get it to tell us what grid that item's in. That's our only issue right now we're trying to fix. But that's what we got coming.
I guess it's funny how we end up with the right segues here, whether we want them or not, actually. But when Maria mentioned the search thing, something, I'm not going to do this, so I'm just throwing it out there into the pool as a possibility. But Maria, of course, had Iberia. And I'm going to say the sim, Iberia, of course, has lots of these hypergates in them. And these hypergates basically just contain a script for the destination location. So you walk through them and go to the destination. And it was occurring to me just earlier today when I was doing my normal thing of wandering around in circles, thinking to myself, wouldn't it be a good idea if these hypergates, which anybody can pick up a copy and then just put a new, location into to make it work to wherever they want to go, actually connected to some kind of back-end system, separate.
I have that. I have a hypergate script that you can say, I want the first most popular retail destination, and it will go to hyperica.com and pull it down. And then you can have the gate next to it going to the second most popular retail destination, and we'll go to Hyperica, pull that down, and put that in. So I have that set up, and in fact, we're bringing in a new researcher this week to add a whole bunch more destinations to Hyperica. It's manually curated right now, so destinations are added manually. I'm going to be trying to add a system so that people can submit stuff better. There's a WordPress plugin to do that. Hopefully that will speed things up. But in general, I've had this problem, and Tim, we talked about this with the marketplaces earlier, that just putting up the technology and expecting grids to connect in, or expecting people to sign up, is not going to work. You really have to either do a big marketing push, or you have to work around people having to manually sign up. So the Kitely market works around the manual sign up by going directly to the customers. And so Hyperica is the only curated one. We go out, we find destinations, we add them in. So that's how we get around people having to manually submit these things. But are you working on anything that automatically pulls in destinations so that
that's
you're
part
not
of our
dependent
search
on
system.
other people? Mm-hmm.
That's part of the search system. That's why we're trying to get the grid login URI to be pulled when search results come in, because it's going to find places. If someone puts their region in search, it's going to end up in our search engine, and we're going to do our absolute best to make sure we only have. The sad thing is we have to try and make sure, does this grid exist on Hypergrid or are they closed? Because the search engine can be added to either or. It doesn't check for that.
Oh.
So we're trying to distinguish between, so there can be a link for the ones that are Hypergrid enabled, so someone can just click the link and jump straight to that region, and versus those that are closed grid where you're going to log into that grid and teleport to that region name. That's our problem right now. Is trying to distinguish. We might have to create a database that does that.
There's a command. There's an OSS command to check if a particular region is Hypergrid enabled.
So this isn't OSSL. We're using built-in system. We're using the actual OpenSim service itself. We're not no scripts put on the regions. It is just the server sending raw data to our backend PHP server. It's just raw data being transferred. And they're not even the server's not getting a reply. I mean, the way OpenSim search works, it just throws, if you have something listed for search on an OpenSim region, OpenSim doesn't even ask for a reply. It just sends it to a server and asks no questions. And so we have to figure out how to organize that push of data better.
What I was sort of getting at a moment ago, I'll actually just quickly refer back here to Second Life. Somewhere at the side of this stage, I think it's on the other side of the bit where people sit, I've got two sort of subscriber kind of things, and they're forever emailing me that they've gone offline, and then they'll be back online a few moments later. But what they do is they, when people subscribe, they just it sort of connects to a back end somewhere and sends them a gift and stuff like that. But the interesting thing is every instance of that sign that I res, even if I take it away and res it at some other distant place on the grid, it sort of records itself as an object. And I suddenly was thinking in OpenSim terms, everybody is sort of is picking up the hypergates, and they're simply resing them for themselves and putting in, altering the script to key in their preferred destination. And what I was wondering is if you could have an object like the hypergates that actually, not as well as you coding in the destination you wanted to take it to, could somehow register itself as a location every time any individual one of these was resed. And
that is actually a system out there. That's how the hypergridgates.com system works. So you just res it out, and as soon as it's resed out, it checks, it makes sure the region is a hypergrid region, and then it registers it to a database. The only problem with these gates is it's kind of a problem on the X engine, which is OpenSim scripting engine. After about 12 hours, those gates tend to cause problems and require a region restart for the gates to work again. So that's really the only downside to it.
There's other downsides too, because the way the system works is that it registers every destination based on the gates that are installed, so that the list of destinations gets really long and really unwieldy really quickly. So it's a dial-up gate. So you click on the gate, and then you choose from destinations. And if you have like several hundred gates, which they have now, it's very, very difficult to sort through them and to find something on it right now. And as the hypergrid grows, it's just problem is going to become very, very difficult. So I've been batting this around. So I've been batting around a way
what
to.
It sounds like is the.
Sorry, Debs. Yeah.
I was just going to say, we're talking about searches, and what's coming to my mind is the algorithms that Google and Yahoo use. We're getting to a stage where we're going to need to have some complex algorithms in place to get the right information, rather than things we don't want to see at all. Sounds like
one thing that one thing that I can do with the Hyperica gates, or maybe to do it if they issue a Zetamex official gate, is to have the gate register itself and also register its destination if the user allows that functionality to help improve search, so that we can start tracking inbound links for hyper gating. The other thing that I suggested, and I've been talking to Justin about this, or maybe this is something a vendor like a Zetamex can build, is to connect the group functionality to an Inworld's event functionality and make that searchable. Because unlike object names, which are all called primitive, event names and group names are usually very descriptive. And you can also rank them, events by, which are coming up first, groups by how many members the group has and whether you're a member of that group. So you have a way to prioritize some results over others. With a text-based search, it's very difficult to prioritize results and to attribute any meaning to those results either, because, like I said, if you have something called chair, does that mean you were in a chair store? Does that mean you're in an auditorium? Or does it mean you're in a classroom? You can't tell. And this is why I've been having problems using Metaverse Inc. as a search. I can use it to find new regions. There's a code you can enter to get that. But I haven't been able to use it to find anything specific on the hypergrid.
Yeah, and I think that's part of the reason of there's no good search. But the thing with the group is when you brought that up, the only way I see that working is kind of like what Mal Burns said, is kind of like Facebook, where they know your friends list and they know what you like and what your friends like. So let's bombard you with that. But the problem with that would be to index in the hypergrid, and the groups are on different grids. And so trying to give you your statistics would be kind of hard, because a lot of people, even though you can hypergrid from Metropolis to OS grid and vice versa, people have an account in both places and are groups of the groups in different places. So prioritizing my group right now is just not really a possible thing when you look at it technically. But that's where our search system we're trying to build comes into play, where it can search the regions and it will pull, it pulls exactly like you would here. When you type in the word shoes, it's going to find all the listings for shoes. And it's going to tell you the region name, and it's going to tell you their description in the land or their classified info. But that's as best as we can really do with the limited technology, unless we could give a patch just for our search engine to open some, but it's not happening because it would be a biased type of thing. It would have to be like an add-on module people could install.
That's actually sort of what I was thinking of, a kind of add-on system, because one thing I use, we all experience it in Second Life, and that is you go to your inventory and you've got a folder called landmarks, and after a while, you can create subfolders for yourself in the inventory, but after a while, you just got an endless list, and you try to think, what was that, and what was that for, etc. And I'm beginning to find with the Hypergrid Safari now, I get a note card everywhere, send the destinations we're going to from the note card into my landmarks at the top of the list, and I can sort of TP there quickly. But the thing I can see being complicated in the hypergrid in future is a mass of landmarks that don't initially tell you which grid you're going to. For example, I would love to have subfolders, and not necessarily in my inventory, maybe it could be a plugin system, which contain various destinations on various grids that I can obviously hypergrid over to. So I would have a list I'd have the equivalent of a folder of my favorites in OS Grid. I'd have a folder of my favorites on Hyperica and or on Fleet Grid or wherever I'm going. And it would just make me much easier to access those and just be able to TP over. And I suppose when I was thinking of this thing about landmarks being registered in a kind of database, I was thinking of how they could be sorted so that you could pull up a menu and, maybe it would mean, shifting to submenus, like pop-out menus. A bit like you would use a start menu on Windows, you go to one category.
It kind of sounds like you're talking about that old HUD in Second Life we had, where you could organize destinations and it would give you the most popular based on everyone using the HUD. Can't remember it, but it was a long time ago.
I remember.
Does anyone else remember that system?
I think
that'd be the best way to do what you're talking about. Would be a HUD, because asking it to be put inside the actual inventory is, again, something the OpenSim devs would probably feel mixed feelings about, because they want open grids as well as closed grids. It's part of the thing where you have to be careful.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that this will happen is to have the way that the same way that Google has basically taken over email for people is to have a separate grid come up and basically take over the inventory process and make it really, really simple to use, put it right out front and give you like a free house with a free closet with really nice Inworld, easy to use organization, natural interface organization, so that it works within an Oculus Rift too, so you don't have to go through menus, but it's more realistic like, and give people free or low cost land for this. And I think that grid will become the place where people create their avatars. Like the way Google owns, for example, my identity right now, because Gmail has such a nice interface and such a nice spam filter that I've pretty much started using them for everything. So I surf the whole web, but I'm always coming back to my inbox. That's always the first tab that's open. So this grid would be like my home for the hypergrid, because it makes it really easy, because it has access to everyone's landmarks. It can find out which is most popular, because it has access to everybody's inventory. It can track of infringement, for example, and copyright, and make it really easy for vendors to sell to users by having that in place. So I think if somebody could get some funding together, once the Oculus starts hitting the market, that's something that could be viable.
One of the interesting things from the web this week is the controversy over Facebook making people use their Messenger as opposed to the proper the old-fashioned Facebook, which was invasive enough, and people are moaning that it's invasive. But my favorite take on it is the fact it's the #1 downloaded app from the App Store in the entire week. Yet at the same time, it's the lowest app in the ratings in the whole App Store, which says something about the way we live these days. It's a thing that everybody hates and doesn't like, and yet is the best, most downloaded.
Did you hear what I said before the start of this show? It was kind of talking to Venomous, saying, everyone complains and hates Second Life, but we all still come here. We have our moans, gropes, and complaints, but we still use it. Same thing. Skype's starting to get bad. We all complain, we need to replace Skype. And what do? We still log into Skype every morning.
Yeah. It comes to a choice between our principles and having something that's easy. We go with the easy stuff.
Yeah.
Which is why I have breakfast burritos in my fridge,
And I think this has a lot to do with what eventually becomes ubiquitous. As Maria said, if Second Life for people who use virtual worlds is kind of ubiquitous because it is still the high street of the metaverse. It may not be the research departments and things like that are done on OpenSim, but it is the place where people put their shop fronts, their store fronts, their PR and stuff like that. The communities are actually
Second Life 2?
The communities are actually here. Yeah, well, that's a different matter. But you know what I was saying there is, let's just take the hypergrid, and let's take Zetamex is hosting here. If that is cheap enough and easy enough, then you've got two of I forget what the third factor was in the towards ubiquity kind of thing. If it's easy, cheap, and usable, then something will actually grow out of that. And I think it's actually what Second Life are after. Debs has just mentioned SL2, and what we do know about that is they need a new platform because they need something modern that will work on tablets and every device you throw at it. They're also something that every Linden Labs CEO has ever said, and that is, well, it's got to be easy, and it's got to be fast, and it's got to be simple, and above all, it's got to be fun. I've heard this a lot of times, but nobody seems to have quite cracked it yet. And I think Second Life 2 is aiming to do that, but it's Second Life 2 is going to be as dissimilar from Second Life 1 as, it's going to be dissimilar from OpenSim 2. There's a lot of commonalities between OpenSim, the Hypergrid, and Second Life, whereas they're clearly building, something that's way down the line, but is, rebuilt from scratch for modern purpose, and, be a separate product until such time as people leave the old one behind and move to it, if indeed they ever do. High fidelity, we don't know how that's going to pan out. That's a big architectural sort of thing that's underway there into pre-alpha, so to speak. We're getting a hint of what things could look like. We will have clips up tomorrow showing, some stuff filmed in the graphical interface of high fidelity, but it's all experimental at the moment. They've held their first sort of filmed event in there, for example, which excited me no end. But the whole back end is very different. We can still vaguely, in the back of our heads, conceive of a way Second Life could be on the hypergrid. Whether it ever is another matter. But it's impossible for us to conceive of the hypergrid as, at the moment, we don't know whether something like a high fidelity installation or space could ever even be on the hypergrid, or whether Second Life 2 will be so different that really has gone off on a tangent.
Rosedale has said that he wants to have a hypergrid style system for high fidelity. And Game Face Labs, the makers of headsets, they've already said that they plan to have support for both OpenSim and High Fidelity and Second Life when they launch, which is going to be in like a year or two. So definitely, I think there's plans out there to have some kind of connection possible. Now maybe. It won't necessarily be like a building kind of viewer, maybe just a view-only viewer, but and eventually, of course, that's what we will get to. I mean, we'll still have some private behind the firewall virtual worlds for companies and schools, and some private worlds for games, but overall, I think we're heading towards a hyper-connected metaverse, one way or the other, and probably we'll have several different paths that converge onto one. Like we did.
I have to agree with Maria. We're moving into. Yeah, I feel like I completely agree with Maria on this, in the sense of, I think the reason why grids like Second Life and Inworlds, I feel that they're being pretty successful right now, but if you've noticed, a lot of people are still slowly moving away, and it's a little bit more every year. And it's because we're moving to a platform to where, why have all my content just here and I can't take it anywhere else? With Hypergrid, I can take my avatar and my inventory to every other Hypergrid place. It's just like visiting a different website, and I'm still using my same browser and my same bookmarks and everything.
One of the things in your survey, Maria, of course, was that everybody agrees with me, of course. What we really want is a dedicated browser viewer for the hypergrid. Now, the only similar system, Philip certainly talks about, a lot of the underlying stuff with Hyperdebt is like module based rather than integrated into the whole thing. So I think his idea of a namespace server, for example, is the equivalent of the addressing system. But obviously, we don't know, a Second Life viewer or an OpenSim viewer will not necessarily be able to go to the address of that namespace and make sense of what it sees, because the whole architecture of what's been generated may be different. Vastpark's navigational system was a bit like web. The idea of namespaces on the web to actually shift you location to location rather than a sort of contiguous world. I wonder whether, we do need a hypergrid viewer that is dedicated to the idea of flying all over the place rather than locked into a particular grid and, the metaphors and interface aspects of a particular grid. But I'm wondering if down the line we won't need something more adaptable, something that can actually cope with whole different types of engines and things, as plugins. The way Firefox, for example, the web browser will have plugins that, with WebGL will allow you to actually access different features depending on what address you go to. Maybe we need some kind of virtual interface that actually can adapt to different interfaces and plugins that might have a commonality between them.
Well, I completely agree with you on that. There needs to be a focus viewer on the whole desire, because right now Firestorm has a dedicated viewer, but if you actually look at their comments, there's only like 2 people really contributing anything for the OpenSim stuff. The rest is all pretty much Second Life focused. And it's kind of sad because OpenSim's going so huge, but most of the viewer devs are still focused primarily on keeping up with Second Life, which is what I understand. OpenSim recoding an entire viewer just for OpenSim would be a lot of work, but I feel we're getting to the point we really need someone to take us and do it.
I'm one of these people who hates having to remember passwords and different avatars and log into this grid, that grid. So, I log into OS Grid, and that's it. I want to, I can't be bothered to open an account anywhere else except my old account in Second Life, because I just want to go places and I don't want to have to do all that change. But just as I'm a different avatar in those 2 grids, I use a different, it changes, but I use a different browser viewer for each grid. I currently use Firestorm for Second Life, and I currently use Moses, which is a sort of Firestorm for the hypergrid, although I use Singularity there as a sort of backup. But I'm not willing to have any more, if you see what I mean. Now, it strikes me that, I don't, maybe everybody else is different from me, but I don't think I've come across many people who use the same viewer for OpenSim as they do for Second Life.
I do.
You don't want, okay.
It works really well, actually, the Firestorm viewer. Yeah.
Especially, and I want to explain that Firestorm, because there was a huge bug which affected everybody in OpenSim. I had so many complaints about it. I had grids that I didn't work for right.
Yeah.
Cross-caching. They would visit Inworlds and they'd visit another grid, and the cross-cache would make objects in one world look all weird and wonky because it's using the cache filter from Inworlds. Yeah. Firestorm fixed this 2 versions ago. Every grid you log into, it makes a completely separate cache file for every user you log in. Granted, it uses more storage space now, but it solves the caching problem.
Yeah, it seems to work pretty well.
Actually, I hadn't heard that before. That really would fit. That would explain a few of the problems I had, but especially as I downloaded the OS version of Firestorm, and much to my horror, it overwrote the SL version. So it didn't create a separate account, just called this Firestorm release, and it meant there was this collision, and I wanted to keep them separate because there's no point in combining them. So actually, well, in that case, maybe you're right. But to me, I just feel like I'm launching one viewer for a hypergrid journey, and I'm launching another viewer for Second Life, and to me, never the twain are likely to meet.
You know what I think would really help?
I do the same thing. I use the official
viewer.
I use the official viewer for OpenSim, and then I use all the other viewers for. I mean, I use the official viewer for Second Life, and all the other viewers for OpenSim.
Yeah.
I wish there was a good marketplace that would work on all the different grids. That would make setting your avatar up very easy. That needs to be developed, and I think that'll make a big difference.
Well, if, I think Kitely's
Kitely.
Yeah, I mean, the only difference is that Kitely can't import into Second Life.
Mm-hmm. But it's limited. I found it to be limited. Am I wrong? I haven't been there for a while.
It's true, but it delivers to all of the 100 plus hypergrid enabled grids, plus any of the closed grids that want to connect to it. Okay. And it's growing pretty fast. I mean, it only launched earlier this year, and it's already got like a couple of thousand items, I think, in it.
But I do want to say one quick thing about that when you're finished.
Mm-hmm. Okay,
I was just going to say, I noticed yesterday that there was a couple posts, and I quickly jumped in, like, someone was talking about buying. They didn't want to connect their PayPal to the marketplace on Kitely because they just wanted to buy a Z. But I was just like, the reason people don't want to sell for the KC is because it's not cash outable. And I actually, as soon as I said that, like, I know like 3 people who just said, oh, we're leaving Kitely. I just closed my store. I'm like, whoa, why are you leaving the Kitely marketplace? You can still make money. Just make sure you sell your item for USD and not for KC. So I think that really needs to be cleared up. Granted, KC cannot be cashed out, but you still make your full money, well, minus Kitely's cut, when you sell it for PayPal money. So there's no need to go running off. A lot of people get scared by that. Yeah. So I just want to make that clear for Kitely market use.
I guess because people weren't paying attention, it goes back to people automatically assume things are the way they expect them to be, and they expect things to work the same way that they're familiar with, say, from Second Life, where you have the 2 currencies, but they're interchangeable. And Kitely was very deliberate about keeping the 2 currencies separate, like the US dollars and the Kitely credits, because of the legal issues. I mean, they spent quite a bit of time on the legal side of it, and they decided that they could not get into the business of being a currency provider if they wanted to grow to any size, and they do want to grow bigger, and so they decided to have it this way from the beginning, and I guess they need to do a better job marketing that.
And I think Kitely's marketplace is catering for the whole hypergrid, and there may not be that much in it at the moment, but the fact is growing bigger and bigger. I mean, Second Life's marketplace started somewhere. In fact, Second Life didn't even own it when it started. It's you open a small shop, you get a lot of customers, you open a bigger shop, etc., etc. That's kind of the way it works. But the fact that there is all that selection available is great.
Tim, you guys are working on a marketplace you mentioned earlier today, right?
Yes.
How are you guys going to handle the currency issue?
The currency issue, what we've decided on was we're going to hook into the Verox's micro. Now, a lot of people, and I think you've gotten this confused in the past before as well, and it's very easy to get confused. I didn't know until I spoke with Verox themselves. The Verox money that Grid use owns. Yeah. That module is third party. They did not make ONC in the world. That is an institution that built it for Inworld use. It relies on the API, their micropayment API, kind of like PayPal's micropayment API that Second Life uses. And what we're going to do is we're going to tie into it. And essentially when you go to check out, it's going to say this item is for sale for X amount of ONC. And then you can either log in with your account or pay with the various payment methods that equal that amount of ONC, and it delivers that ONC to them using the Verox system, micropayment API, because it's not an in-world system. It's all web-based and relies on a web API. All the in-grid stuff is just a module that uses the API. So that's how we're going to be handling it. So all the money is handled by Verox.
And they will handle the legal issues and everything that goes with it. Okay.
Yeah, because it's their pay. It's just like if I use the PayPal API, it's PayPal handles the money issue.
Right. Okay. Oh, will you also accept PayPal as well on top of it?
Well, here's the thing. Verox accepts PayPal. They accept Skrill. They accept bank transfers. They accept multiple things. They even accept Bitcoin. So this really opens up to a bigger market, because that's one of the things that I've actually had people come to us saying they wanted this new marketplace, is because they can't buy from Kitely because their country doesn't support PayPal.
Okay. But if somebody does have PayPal and don't want to set up a separate account with Verox, because it's a pain.
Have you ever actually bought from a grid that was using the Verox API? Just curious. Yeah. It pops up a web page if you when it pops
like
up
PayPal
web
does.
page,
Yeah,
and it says log in, or you have option pay with PayPal now, pay with credit card now, pay with Skrill now. So it actually lets you pay with PayPal immediately without logging in, lets you pay with a credit card immediately without logging in, Skrill without logging in. So that kind of solves that issue there, because they'll accept PayPal without you even needing a Verox account. The only people who need the Verox account are the merchants.
Okay.
Does that make sense now? Because it's kind of like it's a payment gateway system that supports multiple payment gateways. It's a little confusing. So essentially like when you're.
So if you're a merchant cashing in to PayPal, you're going to be paying the PayPal transaction plus the Verox transaction fee plus your marketplace transaction fee if there's one on top of that.
No. If you're a merchant, you don't have to eat any fees. All right, so how the Verox module API, the Verox API works is you're going to list your product for X amount of OMC, just like you would on the Second Life Marketplace. So let's say I make a hair, put the hair on the marketplace for 500, whatever credit we're going to call them. We're probably just going to use OMC because that's what it's going to be paying through. So 500 OMC. And then when they click buy, they get taken to a page that is linked to that merchant's Verox account. They get it, no matter what the person pays, they're going to get 500 OMC. If they pay a credit card, if the person buying pays a credit card, PayPal, or OMC directly with an account they have, they're just going to get 500 OMC. When they go to cash out, they just pay the $1 cash out fee from Verox of their total money. So they don't lose any money here. They're going to get the full 500 OMC. Verox eats all the payment processing fees for us.
Why are they doing that?
Well, that's because they charge you $1 to buy and $1 to cash out. So if you cash out every time you make a sale, they're going to make $1 every time you cash out. So I'd recommend only cashing out when you have like $10 worth, so you get $9 out. That's how Verox eats. That's where Verox makes their money eating your payments. Is they take $1 every cash out.
This is just a bit like Second Life, really. I mean, I never put any money into Linden Labs, but I've got quite a few Lindens in my account that I've accumulated for various things over the years, and I never cashed it out or tried to, because the value to me is just keeping it in there. Because the fees, if I cashed out and then put back in, for example, I would lose money. So I just tend to work on the basis of keeping the pool where it is.
So you've never cashed out any money at all?
Not for Second Life, no.
Because I just ran into this. Somebody decided to pay me for advertising in Linden dollars. That was the only way they could make a payment to me. I was like, okay, fine. I'll just cash it out. It turns out that the first time you do a cash out through Lindex, you have to wait. You have to buy some money first through the Lindex. Then you have to wait like 8 to 10 days to become an approved person. And then you do the cash out. And then you have to wait like another 8 to 10 days for the money to actually arrive.
God, that's
so I would suggest doing a small cash out, at least at the beginning, so that the first 8 days are at least taken care of.
Verox is kind of the same, but they're not that complicated. It's just a 24-hour. Your first time takes 24 hours because they want to make sure you're not scamming them. So the first cash out is 24 hours. And if you do like a transaction that's worth 50 or more, they put a pending to verify you actually have that money and you didn't scam them. But anything less than $50 worth, they're just like, here you go after your first 1 day verification period. So it's a much safer system. It offers multiple ways to pay in, and it's only $1 to cash out, which is really affordable. I think Second Life's like $1.50 or something like that to cash out.
Yeah, and if you're unlucky, they charge you USA income tax as well. But that's that's another story.
Yeah, didn't that come in the news lately? Inworld was starting to have to accept tax things now.
Yeah,
because they're based in the United States.
The first instance was also there's quite an uproar because it was an Australian who actually tried to withdraw some money from their lender accounts in Second Life. And they were they had US income tax deducted, even though, of course, they pay Australian income tax on their income. So they were paying twice. And, they're not an employee of Linden Lab. So Linden Lab can't be taking an employer's contribution off. But it was, I don't know, something to do with American law. You pay American taxes whether you live here or not. And this was obviously causing some controversy. We discussed it the other week.
There's a form you file to avoid double payment on your taxes, and this particular guy did not want to file a form to the IRS because he didn't want to support the U.S. government's military policies.
Oh,
which I kind of agree with, but his Linden dollar is probably going to drop in the bucket compared to all the money the U.S. government wastes on. Anyway.
Yeah. Well, yeah. A whole different debate there.
We're getting politics here.
Yeah.
Yes. One day we'll turn this. Yeah. Lest we ever turn this into a political discussion show. I'm quite happy to talk about the environmental impact of virtual worlds like this, but there are limits. Look on the bright side in the future, I think. Okay, now, as usual, we've been gossiping away for a while. I had one open here I was going to post. It's actually something at Google Plus, and I'm sending it over now. In fact, I think I've copied it twice. Yes, I had. Letitia De Leon, she's been on the show a couple of times, actually. She has... she's an editor, I believe, at the Journal of Virtual Studies, and they've put out a call for papers that you might be interested in on that link. Oh yes, of course, she's been part of our Virtual World's Best Practices in Education broadcasts. I knew there was a connection, absent-minded. And Road to VR, which I know Maria follows as well.
Yes, religiously.
I've actually given up twittering half the links there because there seem to be endlessly more games links about games and Kickstarters for games and everything, all designed for ridiculous. But they're really moving. This is actually moving out of my framework. And it's virtual worlds, immersive, contributory spaces. Fair enough. But they did have an interesting place actually earlier in the week too. Though there was on the set of something called The Mission VR, which is a World War II short film that's actually, I gather, already been shot using virtual reality. I'll just get the link to that over to you as well. So
I saw that. It looked really interesting.
It's I try and watch as much as possible. There are there have been quite a few demos of so-called games and things. That are obviously being built to prototype the Oculus device, and it is actually nice to see a few of them that don't involve flying planes or shooting people. They're audience experiences. They are still very self-contained things, but I have actually noticed a few, nice-looking experiences, as it were, that have been developed for this. But, I've got to draw the line somewhere. So as far as I'm concerned, if it's not an immersive communication space, I draw the line, which explains why I'm not tweeting 20 posts from Motor VR every day. They have actually, though, been doing quite a few interesting things. As we mentioned the other week, they had a meet-up in the Rift Theatre thing. There's a weekly chat show sort of thing that comes out of that, and they're actually planning. I haven't got it open, but they are actually planning another one. So it is actually interesting seeing their purchases, as well as maintaining a blog about them. So that's yes. Now I've got my other feed, of course, but it is I'm just scrolling down my other feed to check that there's nothing of general interest. It tends to all be Second Life stuff. SL Inquirer are having a poll today saying, if you were the president of Second Life, what issues would you address? That's quite an interesting question to put to people, isn't it?
Prices. I would drop the prices.
Yeah, well, I think the pitch was like a governance thing. Like if you were the president of the world rather than president of the company that runs it, which I just thought was intriguing. Well, how would you lay down the law in Second Life?
I wonder what would happen if Second Life, if Second Life were to suddenly match Zetamex land prices.
Oh yes.
What would that do to Second Life?
I honestly think it would probably kill Second Life, honestly, because they have a lot of people who they pay big, nice, fluffy wages, and if they went too low on their prices, they wouldn't be able to pay those nice, fluffy wages. That's what I feel.
And they'd make all those other people who are paying those big prices for those Sims really angry too, right? Is that what you mean? Mm-hmm. All right.
Well, I mean,
this is why I don't talk.
Again, other companies are able to lower prices successfully. So there's Second Life should be able to lower its prices as well. I mean, look at Zetamex. They're lowering prices like almost every week. And for some reason, their customers don't complain or get up in arms and walk away. Like, how dare you lower prices on us? We hate paying less. That doesn't happen.
I do get the occasional comment about it, but I'm just like, you can cancel service, and because we grandfather both directions, because there's been times where we launch a new type of plan that is similar that costs more, and then people are happy that they bought it when they did, but grandfathering works in both directions. So I mean, I'm more than happy to save their ore and bring them to a new plan, but I do reverse grandfathering as well, just so I don't make everyone angry. If I do it one way, I gotta do it all the ways, right? This thing.
I posted another link just now, actually, which I've typed in chat. That was actually a thing at SL Inquirer, written by Pixel. What's his name? Who does Second Life News and did taxing problem.
Oh, okay. So that was the SL Inquirer link. Okay, sorry about that.
Yeah. No problem. I'm just saying what it was, basically. Right. Okay. Yeah. So still just flipping for the last minute to my list here, but I think it's all other arts and various other stuff in Second Life which we don't really have time to. Oh yes, there is one more. I'll just get it up. Relay for Life. Of course, it is all over in Second Life, but it's just starting on Inworlds, which of course is not a hybrid in sim, but it is an open sim, for want of a better word. This is
Voyager had something.
Yeah,
right?
This is indeed Daniel Voyager is in the audience, and this is Daniel Voyager's blog just coming up. So you
should have him on here.
Yeah, Dan, if you're out there, I think we've invited Dan on numerous occasions. I think he's a don't do voice person. As they say in the trade. I'm very familiar with don't do voice people. If you do voice, Dan, you're welcome. Come on, any time. Right, there we go.
He's really a hot, sexy woman in real life. It doesn't want the truth to come out.
I think I've got a feeling I have heard Dan on voice. He's a big, I think he's like a big owl or something most of the time in World without lips, but I can't be sure. You never can tell. Sort of. I'm terrible. I want a tag over my head that says voice only instead of text only, because I'm terrible with the keyboard. Anyway, so okay, let's well, gosh, we covered an awful lot here. And we are running out of time. I think the best thing now is to actually go round. Wizard says, I second that emotion. Very good. Wizard Genoid, who's part of, if I pronounced it right, probably haven't, is part of the Hypergrid Safari, and she's in the chat with us here on the channel. Right. I think I'm just going to go around everybody for other sort of things. I'm going to start with our two special guests, as it were. I'll start with you, Chris. Over and beyond, or maybe Zetamex as well, we'd like to round up with sort of a kind of ask you anything exciting in the past week or two, or anything exciting coming up, be it of your own concern or just of general interest of things happening in the greater metaverse, so to speak. So anything else you'd like to get in while you're here?
I'll let Tim answer that one. We're still working on a lot of stuff, though.
What, you mean no? Yeah.
Tim and I have been busy working on a lot of products for customers and non-customers.
Right.
And one of them is actually our, I don't know what he's calling it just yet, but it was Zeta Panel 3 that we're working on that's gone into beta for our customers.
It's just being rebranded as my Zetamex instead of a different name. I just figured putting my Zetamex would make it more understandable for people to know what they're talking about. But yeah, it's code name Zeta Panel 3 though.
Right. This for listeners who aren't familiar with what we're talking about is actually if you do own or operate a hosted Zetamex, this is literally the panel you use to control your sim and stuff like that, isn't it?
Just so since he's pretty much passed it on to me, I'll go ahead and do my little wrap up on that since he brought that up. Right now, our biggest thing we're working on is Zeta Panel project code name Zeta Panel 3 going to be called My Zetamex once it's a finished product. We have a couple customers beta testing it right now, but essentially right now our control panel system that we had was clunky and old and took a lot of effort to set up for every client. Our new system is fully integrated. We're working on making a simple single sign-in system because you had to log into your billing, log in port, and log in to control your region, and I felt that was ridiculous. So that's what we've done is we're putting one login for everything, so you don't have to remember all these logins for everything. Make it simple, and that's what we're working on right now.
Well, I haven't used it, but I'll give it a sigh of relief anyway, because I can't stand is remembering different passwords and different logins. We were talking about an old grid that used to be around called Spot on 3D earlier, and I don't know how many steps of different logins and passwords I had to go through to do things on that, but I just gave up.
Yeah, because you had to have like a key account. Yeah, you had to have like the key account, and then you had sub accounts, but then you had to log into another account to do your marketplace. It was really weird.
It's, why create a web when you don't need one, basically?
Right.
Okay, Debs, what have you been doing? Any news particularly from the various virtual Londons and anything coming up?
Oh, well, gosh, what are we doing? All sorts of things as usual. We're opening a couple of clubs as usual. Things are Experience is now ready and fully functioning, and it's kind of with a twist because, we've got people who are helpers who come along and, get new users in. They want to be shown it. They don't just want to try and find things for themselves. They want to be taken through, and they walk through a maze and they come out the other end, and they've made friends, they've been guided around things, and they kind of enjoy it, so they come back for more, obviously. Got a new underground club opening soon in London. We've just had the sort of soccer festival for the summer, for the early summer, obviously with the World Cup and everything else. So that was fun, and we're looking at other grids. Obviously, the new up and coming what would you call it, virtual worlds. Mm-hmm. So that's kind of it. We're sort of we're just doing what we do. We've got the community. We carry on with the community, and we just do what we do, and that's it really.
Has anybody been testing? I don't know, the virtual London Second Life with Oculus yet? Do you know, or Control Alt, whatever viewer?
Yeah. Maria told me about. We've actually got a huge roller coaster in Second Life. It's supposed to be the biggest one in Second Life. Somebody was actually sick.
Oh, I bet.
Tried it with Oculus Rift.
So it could have been me. It wasn't, but it could have been if I'm being honest.
It was Maria. Tell the truth.
I can't handle that. I can't handle that. Even without an Oculus Rift, I don't think I could handle it.
Yeah.
Just too much.
It's quite something.
Too much vertigo for me.
It's like thrilling to think you're going to die.
Well, I'd love to give it a try then.
Yeah.
I did. I think at one of the old Chilbo fairs here at Chilbo in Second Life, we had something like that. It was relatively small, and I dared it, and I think it was so laggy it didn't really work. but yeah, I look at those high-speed even the old VR stuff. I used to go to. There's one in one place I can think of is Longleat in Wiltshire, and they've got the VR thing. You go into this thing that looks like a space shuttle, and you strap yourself there, and it vibrates all around you and goes at high speed up and down. And I was ill, no doubt about it. It wasn't the immersion; it was just the kind of immersion I was being subjected to. That was rather upsetting for me personally. But anyway, yeah, great fun. While I'm at it, I should actually just point out something I saw way back in the chat a little bit earlier. If you want to type into the channel chat, I know you're there, Debs, and speak it as well. The actual web slow for virtual London. Not to be. There is actually another venue in Second Life which is not Debs, called London City. I think there's probably millions of them, and we don't even know about them.
Yeah,
but it's a separate. That is a separate thing, so we don't want people to get confused.
Please don't get confused. Yeah. I'll just copy it and.
How many Londons can the world handle? Or the virtual world?
Well, I tell you, we've had so far. I've counted about 10 different Londons. I met Mirko, who founded Trinity, and he said, I got the idea from you, and I thought, okay, and. But it's very flattering.
Oh yeah.
I'm looking at it now, and we've got people. We've got we've got about 40 people on there, which is quite a lot, considering, we're just a community. We don't. That's what we do. We just do community, and we're there for the people. That's us.
And it's actually interesting. One thing I notice about your community is that. The people are there pretty much around the clock, aren't they? It is not just English people who are gravitating to the virtual London, but there's, you've got a whole community of people who probably wish they lived in London or something, and therefore hang out at virtual London.
We've got teams members. We've got events going on at the moment. We've got a DJ there. She's an Australian. We've got Brits. We've got Americans. We've got people from the Middle East. They're all team members as well. So, you can be bound to find somebody there. I mean, I speak Portuguese because I live in Portugal, and it's so, at least every day I get one person from Portugal or Brazil or something like that, and we're talking Portuguese. I think they're all fed up with me talking Portuguese now.
Well, the other thing is that London, in the organic world, it's a multicultural society in many ways. Yeah. So, it's to be expected. But the additional reach of the virtual world is just a bonus. So.
Yeah.
Great stuff.
Yeah,
Okay.
I think it's my background in psychology. You see, I love people and I love. So there you go.
Yeah. Yeah, that's what I need. I'm very guilty of ignoring people half the time. No, if not like this with the conversation and it's targeted and it's interesting, but I'll log in somewhere and if people are just gossiping, rather than engage. But we all handle the massive overload in our different ways.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Thank you for inviting me on the show, by the way.
Oh, that's been great. It's always great to see you.
It.
And and you're always good at participating in the greater discussion as well, which is rather crucial on this show. We never know where it's going to go. Do we? Petlove.
No, we don't.
Petlove, over to you. Exciting things coming up that you wish to reveal?
Well,
you're able to reveal.
Nothing I'm really able to reveal. I heard another show similar to yours, The Spotlight, hosted by Kinte Ferguson on Blog Talk Radio. If anybody ever wants to look Kinte up, those shows are very good. I'd like to put a word in for him. And for me, it's the same old thing. You can find my work on a lot of different channels. You can find Petlove on Vimeo. You can find her on YouTube under Try to Fight. See, Kinte has also taught me to try to promote myself. This is me trying to promote myself. That's the end of it. But thank you for having me on the show, too. It's always a pleasure.
It's funny. I've been on, I don't know, Kinte's show talks more about machinima, doesn't it?
He has a couple of different formats. One of the ones that has really picked up speed fast is what he calls Mars Venus. And he just has men and women talking about men's and women's issues, particularly as they interact together and the different types of challenges they face. And people really get into it. It's interesting. And then he also has a few machinima-oriented ones, too. I think Mondays and Thursday nights at 9 Pacific time. I'll try to get the link for you.
I guess. So I actually get all the notices from him via Facebook, which Facebook's one of those things I'm not very attentive to, unfortunately. But they come by email, so I look out for them. But I see them anyway. Yeah. But I've been on a few of Kinte's shows, but they're always machinima focused. And,
I think that's the indieradio.org address that he uses for those. Yeah. And he has movie nights. People can have an interactive chat like what Lepaisian does with A View TV when he broadcasts, and like we're doing here with this show and with your show. And people sit and banter about the movie as it goes on. So that's also, if it's a funny, stupid, like a B movie that was mainstream, we all sit around and have a lot of laughs. Or else he screens people's original movies, and they get lots of, uplifting comments, and it's just a very nice experience. It's fun. So indieradio.org, Kinte Ferguson, or the Spotlight. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, no, they're good shows.
Oh, and The Walking Dead. Don't forget the zombie show. I think that's coming back in the fall. Oh no, rabid zombie fans, rabid, and they know it inside and out.
I think I'll pass on that. I'm not a big fan of zombie stuff.
No,
I'm afraid.
Me either. But there are a lot of people
we had an installation. When I was doing some work with Metaverse TV quite a while ago now, on their sim, they had a role-play thing with some kind of automated role-play zombie thing. And, the fastest way to get me off that island, believe me. I don't care what we had to discuss. I'm not doing it with these things.
I could never figure out how they could be so popular. They're so weird. Ugh.
Yeah. Well, I suppose, if I was younger, I'd probably be going to my communities. When I was a kid, I was like putting on a school teacher's cape and a pair of plastic fangs and pretending to be Dracula at parties. And depending on how elevated some of the participants of the party were, they would freak out. But I've grown out of that. a long time ago. No more zombies, vampires, and werewolves for me. It's just a bit too much.
Lions and tigers and bears are better, right?
Indeed. Wizard in chat actually is when we're mentioning Facebook, has actually said Mal is untaggable in Facebook, and I'm not quite. I noticed that Wiz in the post, and I don't know why I'm untaggable. I thought people could just tag me in photographs they put up of me and stuff like that. But I don't know what the story is there. But if it involves getting into a Facebook control panel somewhere, forget it. I get I got the incomings there, but I post some posts there, but I never go to the app itself, so it's all a bit secondhand for me. Okay, but actually, if you're interested in the Hypergrid Safari, when Lap has actually left the chat, I believe, but he put a link in a few lines back actually to Hypergrid Safari by Fushina, who was on the show a few weeks ago, to a clip she did that did advertising it, which you'll find at Slartist. We have actually been showing that for about 3 or 4 weeks on the channel here now, so nice little ad for the Hypergrid Safari, which is a great thing. To find that, you need to log into OS Grid or Hypergrid into OS Grid and find me, and I can TP you over to this application. But it's basically every Wednesday, and it takes place at what is noon Second Life time. There's also one on Sundays, but since it collides with the show, I can't be there. So we'll find out a bit later. Okay, so I'm just hearing the Skype twittering in the background here. Are you still with us, Chris and Tim? Or have they?
Yeah, I'm still here.
Oh, right, okay. I was seeing what sounded like goodbyes in Skype.
Debs had to say goodbye.
I think it was Deb has to. Yeah, Deb's had to go.
Right. Okay. Well, we're about to close the show now, so if you need to hop up, it's been absolutely great having you here. Interesting conversation, and hope maybe we'll see you again.
Well, thanks for having us.
Yeah, it's nice talking to you guys outside the comments. Kind of face to face, so to speak.
I try to get outside those comments. It's a lot nicer to talk to you guys directly rather than through comments, especially the comments today have been pretty bad.
Oh dear. Yeah, there's nothing like a voice-to-voice chat, and we like it here because we ad lib a bit, we don't stick to rigid interviews or anything like that.
It is a very relaxed show.
Mm. But we still cover
masses. I know. Yes, and it was great. And, Maria got her little 2-minute clip of me saying she's right, so she can go get that from Petlove.
Hey, my life is now complete. I can die tonight, and I will feel like I have accomplished everything that I set out to.
Don't say that, done. Maria. You're not done yet.
My kids are out of the house.
Stop, Maria.
Oh, come on, you can't.
Come on.
My kids are out of the house, and I am right. What else does a person need?
No,
I think that's wonderful. We all need a time of contentment. Enjoy it while you've got it, because I'm sure your attitude in the morning will be totally different.
And I have ice cream waiting for me in the freezer. I've got ice cream waiting for me in the freezer as soon as I get off. So life is just perfect right now.
That's great.
well, here's the thing, Mario. You can't go off just yet because you have to cover when Abbey World shuts down again.
Oh my God! Yes.
Yeah, don't forget Abbey World.
Who can be complacent while the Yo-Yo Grid exists?
Who is going to be their next hosting company? Oh, I want to find out.
That's
You're right.
True. You need to know, so you can laugh.
Yeah,
too.
I like to know.
All right.
Okay.
Speaking.
Anything else, Maria? On closing. Yeah.
Yes. Speaking of finding things out, the middle of the month is coming up on the 15th, and I will be gathering data from grids and anyone on OpenSim about statistics and about stuff going on. I want to get marketplace statistics. I want to get events. I want to get grid openings and closings, all that stuff. Please do not complain that I don't write about your grid if you don't let me know about your grid. I'm not psychic, people. These things don't magically land in my head. People email me at maria@hypergridbusiness.com. So if you want your grid in the listings, email me. If you are looking to do grid data stats for me, please add in the variable sized regions. OpenSIM's one of OpenSIM's huge advantages is the low cost of land, and it's the fact that it's twice as big as Second Life is a selling point. It is a selling point, and so when I want to cover that to the fullest extent. So if your grid does have var regions, please run that new script, the new console command, and add them all up, and either put it on the website or email me. And I will be posting the grid land area this month and for the next few months in region counts and in square kilometers, because apparently most of my readers, more than half of my readers, are from outside the states. So we're going with kilometers instead of miles. And also the conversion is easier because of the OpenSIMs and meters anyway.
The zeros.
So please do that.
Nothing like ones and zeros, is there?
Yes. Any announcement that's too small for a standalone story, send it my way. I'll throw it into the roundup.
Right.
All right.
Cool.
And that's it for me.
You can obviously follow Meta Maria on Twitter. And if you just want to read the news for that matter, you can go to hypergridbusiness.com.
Oh, yeah. I guess you can do that.
That's just the boring stuff, though. We want participation. Okay, a slight extra word from Wizard Ginoid in chat, actually. The Sunday edition of Hypergrid Safari is actually only on the first Sunday of every month. So the weekly one is still the Wednesday one. The monthly Sunday ones are just for people who can't make the given time midweek. So thank you for that, Wiz. Right. I think that's it. We've slipped over our 2 hours again. We always seem to manage to, even when they give us a 10-minute stutter. So I'd like to thank everybody for being here again. Thank you, Debs.
Debs says you're welcome in absentia.
Right.
She's gone.
Oh, fine.
Okay.
I see. Okay. Thank you, Pet.
Very welcome. Thank you.
Thank you, Tim.
Thank you for having me.
And thank you, Chris.
Thank you for having me.
And thank you, Maria.
Oh, it's always a pleasure, Mal. Always a pleasure.
Indeed. And as always, an extra big thank you to me. You won't hear that one anywhere else, will you?
So I should close the camera out before we all beat you up, or? No, I'm only kidding.
Right. Well, we will be back same time, same place next week. That is noon Second Life time on Sundays, when we're actually live on Metalworld 2 at live stream, Bill for Charities. And you can see us anytime in replay, including all our previous shows, by going to slartist.com. That's SLARTIST.com, and just look up Inworld Review, and you can view us continuously throughout the week. Put us on a loop for 7 days. At any time of your choosing. So I've gone back to adopted my very old byline for a long while, and that is to say sort of good morning, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, or even good tomorrow, depending on wherever or whenever you are. And we will return next week. Thank you for watching. Next week. Thank you for watching.